Fire Emblem 6, the game known by all those filthy casuals who don't know how to calculate a hit rate, as that one Fire Emblem game that has Roy from Smash Bros in it. And what always helped me on a spiritual level is the fact that this sentence isn't even incorrect. Roy's first appearance was in Melee and not the Binding Blade. Hell, Sakurai and Melee are literally in FE6's credits, so Roy's officially just an OC who robbed Leaf of his rightful place in Smash. This does explain why Roy has next to no personality in-game besides the typical good guy stuff he does. It's almost as if another Fire Emblem Lord from a game that was already released at the time was meant to be in Smash, seeing as how this totally theoretical Fire Emblem Lord's personality at the start of their respective game matches up almost perfectly with Roy's characterization in Smash. But how does this link at all to the topic of this video, you may ask? Well, it doesn't, but I figured I'd tell you about it anyway. Now, as the first non-Kaga Fire Emblem game to be released, the Binding Blade acted as a soft reset in terms of the franchise's gameplay and mechanics, resulting in fan-favourite features from Thracia, such as staves being able to miss, and active kidnappings, not making it into this game. However, not all was lost, as on top of the rescue mechanic returning, some other ideas introduced in the previous games were slightly tweaked and modified for this one, such as with Fog of War, which went from making everything out of sight, including the tiles and terrain pitch black, to just greying out any enemies that are outside of your unit's vision. And supports in this game have actual conversations behind them, which add small tidbits of personality and backstory to these otherwise mostly mute characters. Now, it's important to mention that supports here aren't that long, and can take literal hundreds of turns to build, but you can just read them up online anyway, so who cares. We should also mention that there's no fancy skills or growth modifiers in this game, so units are really only their base stats, growth rates, and promotion bonuses. This simplicity really helps the game hone in on its strategic elements, rather than the toolboxing aspect of Fire Emblem that later games decided to focus on. And as a result of this more restrictive gameplay, the maps in this game become fairly solid and fun to play through as a result. And one thing that makes this game's maps especially fun is how it encourages faster play with its anti-turtling incentives, as on top of enemy reinforcements that spawn near your starting points, there's also guidance chapters that often require you to beat a chapter under a certain amount of turns, and or without a specific unit dying. And you'll need to complete all of these guidance chapters if you hope to get this game's secret ending. And on top of mostly good map design, this game also has some very unbalanced unit design. You see, in a fashion typical for the older Fire Emblem games, this game builds itself around its permadeath, by giving you lots, and I mean lots of units. And some of these guys are so bad that you question how they even managed to get through playtesting. But at other times, you get absolutely overpowered units such as Rukta, who can reach a crit rate of over 100%, and Milady, who can solo entire portions of a map all by herself. Now, is this game having very unbalanced units a bad thing from a game design standpoint? Yes, absolutely. But is it funny to train up these bad units with extreme favoritism, even though there's like 5 other units in your army who can do the exact same thing but better? Also yes. Some units being better than others doesn't automatically make this game unplayable or not fun to play. But one thing that does sort of make this game somewhat unfun to play and fairly frustrating is its ambush spawns. For those of you who don't know, ambush spawns refer to when reinforcements spawn in during the enemy phase and can move and attack on the same turn that they enter a map. Sometimes the game will warn you of these reinforcements via boss dialogue, but other times it'll throw you in the deep end and tell you to just deal with it. Now, some people will say that it's just a cheap way to artificially spice up difficulty for first-time players, and yes, that's exactly what it is. It's supposed to be unfair and force resets. It's sort of like jump scares in horror movies. They feel very cheap to use, yes, but can still be enjoyed nonetheless if used effectively. The fundamental issue still stands that they often appear out of thin air and are basically impossible to see coming. But it's the fact that you can't see them coming that makes these reinforcements an actual engaging and challenging threat to the player. To make my point more understandable, I'll go back to horror movies for a second. Me putting an active countdown on this video for when I jump scare you would make the jump scare boring and predictable. But if I were to do this... Now, the other major issue that people have with the Binding Blade, other than getting jumped by a legion of shirtless gay men in the middle of a desert, is its hit rates. Due to factors such as weapons being less accurate and a weaker weapon triangle, the hit rates in this game can be described as shaky at best. especially when it comes to bosses, since Gates and Thrones grant a whopping 30 avoid instead of the usual 20, like in other Fire Emblem games. Now yes, attacks missing is only fun when it happens to the enemy, I completely agree, but the reduced accuracy does increase this game's difficulty, which I do in fact appreciate in my supposed tough as nails strategy JRPG game. The combination of BS from the bad hit rates, paired up with the enemy reinforcements that have their locations hand-picked to force resets, because apparently the map designer's wife was having an affair with another man when he was designing this game's maps, makes for a game that's fairly challenging and satisfying to beat. Overall, I'd rank this as one of the harder Fire Emblem games of the franchise that don't just blatantly inflate enemy stats to obscene levels, and I think that's pretty cool. But with all that said and done, I guess I'll see you guys later.